So, greetings everybody. My name is Juliana Ferrero and I'm a senior consultant for GWOPA and I will be moderating this session. Well, as we can see, the room is still quite empty, so I hope you will be still pleased to present for the audience that is here today, and I hope that some more people will come in as we go along. So the first publication, actually we have a set of publications today that will be launched or pre-launched. So the first one is the Global Report on Sanitation and Wastewater Management in Cities and Human Settlements. That will be officially launched in a few months, but today there is going to be in 2 months, and today there's going to be a pre-launch. Then the second is a publication on groundwater assessment and management. The third is a report on phase 1 of the Waterworks program. The fourth is a publication on the role of sextortion in the wash sector in Bangladesh. And the last one is a presentation on the revised water safety planning manual. So we can start with the first presentation now, and it will be done by 2 persons. So one is a person that is with us today, so Mr. Tiresh Prasad Khatri, and the other is a video message from Mr. Sam Drabble. So I will now call to the stage Mr. Tiresh Prasad Khatri. He is the Joint Secretary at the Ministry of Water Supply, Government of Nepal. He has been in the wash sector for more than 32 years in various roles. Mr. Khatri has obtained his master's degree in environmental engineering from Tribhuvan University. So please, Mr. Tiresh. You have no slides, right? There are no slides for you.
No.
Great. Please.
Very few audience. Good afternoon, everyone. Distinguished ladies and gentlemen, it is a pleasure for me to have this opportunity to speak to you on the Global Report on Sanitation and Wastewater Management in Cities and Human Settlements pre-launching event. And I am even more grateful and happy to have Sangu Narayan, one of the cities in Nepal, among 18 cities mapped on the report that reflects Nepal, regional, as well as global scenario of sanitation and wastewater sector not being prioritized. I would like to highlight the UN Habitat contribution for Nepal to the wash sector since 2005 to the date continually through Water for Asian Cities Program, Global Sanitation Fund Program, and currently on Citywide Inclusive Sanitation Program, remarkably attributing towards the transformation in wash sector. Let me now focus on the key challenges on safe and inclusive sanitation in Nepal. Wastewater from 3.2 million, about 11% of homes in Nepal is transported away by sewage. Of that, only 3% is being treated. Human waste from on-site sanitation system from 25.8 million people, around 89% homes, infiltrates into the ground and or largely discharged unregulated and untreated into the water bodies and lowlands. 67% of the population dwelling in urban municipalities add pressure for expansion and service delivery improvement. And in policy and legislation, sanitation is less prioritized than water. However, on positive note, there are reforms initiated on sanitation. Safe water and sanitation services are fundamental human rights as enshrined in the Constitution of Nepal. The Ministry of Water Supply is currently in the process of drafting water supply and sanitation regulation to affect the newly enacted Water Supply and Sanitation Act 2022. Domestic wastewater effluent standards are now available for use in the design of treatment systems and monitoring and compliance. The National Waste Management Information System currently has information on household level water and sanitation and is to be extended to embed sanitation attributes to overall monitoring of SDG 6.2 and 6.3. Thank you for your attention. So, shall I? Okay. Shall I?
Thank you so much, Mr. Khatri. The next presentation is starting up, so I will not have the chance
Okay,
to
hi everyone.
introduce
I'm Sam Jabal, Head of Evaluation, Research and Learning with Water and Sanitation for the Urban Poor. What's up? We're leading a consortium on behalf of UN Habitat for this global report. And here I'm just going to give a rapid overview of the scope of this research and really aim to set the scene for the full launch of the report to follow in Nairobi in June. So as brief introductory context, first thing to say about this initiative is it falls under UN Habitat's mandate to work towards resilient and sustainable cities. The report provides a global reference on wastewater and fecal sludge management in urban settings. And I wanted to here draw out three complementary aims of this report and how those relate to our target audience. So the first aim is to raise political visibility of this issue, this huge issue of inadequate sanitation in urban context. The report sets out the vast health and environmental and socio-economic impacts of this neglect of sanitation, and it aims to place sanitation at the heart of the urban development agenda going forward. To support that, the report also aims to inspire. It aims to highlight best fit practice, to showcase cities that are already confronting this challenge, already innovating, already making real progress towards citywide coverage. And it provides technical guidance for really the key target audience for this report. The target audience is wide-ranging. It includes researchers and practitioners, but the core target audience are decision makers at the regional, national, and city levels involved in urban sanitation and urban development more broadly. Now, bearing that in mind, a key challenge facing decision makers and the sanitation sector in general is lack of data and poor quality data. And the starting point for this report is a global mapping looking at 18 focus cities around the world and looking to understand current levels of wastewater and fecal sludge management performance in these cities. To do that, we've engaged directly with the service authorities who are responsible for sanitation services, responsible for treatment. We've leveraged our consortium partners who include 2IE, for example, based in Burkina Faso, TLU based in Vietnam, SOAS, the Eastern and Southern Africa Water and Sanitation Regulators Association. Through that engagement, we've been able to generate a really useful and insightful snapshot into current levels of wastewater and fecal sludge treatment and management performance, as well as emerging trends, emerging innovations. That global mapping is then supported by 5 in-depth case studies, and here I think it's worth just taking a step back and viewing this challenge through the lens of citywide inclusive sanitation. So the report makes the case for sanitation as a public good. It makes the case for sanitation as a public service and a public service approach. What, though, does that mean in practice? What are the key elements that involves? What can decision makers take from that framework and that viewpoint? The report breaks this down into 5 core thematic areas, and for each area in turn, we look at one focus city where meaningful progress has already been made. Medellin, Colombia, resource planning and management. We look at the long-term planning and financing of citywide services. Ouagadougou in Burkina Faso, a key challenge is around extending services to informal settlements as absolutely fundamental to equity. We look at the work that's taken place there around responsibilities. Dakar, a fascinating megacity context. We look at accountability and improvements to the institutional and regulatory framework for sanitation. Data management we explore through the lens of the utility in Nakuru, NOWASCO, the regulator WASREB and the work that they're doing to pilot a new tool to enhance sanitation data management and ultimately inform sanitation investment planning. And climate resilience and emerging innovations. Climate resilience is clearly a core theme that runs throughout this report. It's an absolutely core challenge faced now by cities in regions around the world, but a number of cities are already innovating in this area, and we highlight Hanoi in Vietnam as one case where climate resilient wastewater management systems have already been implemented. That global mapping, those case studies, they then provide the basis for a call to action, and we set out 6 core recommendations targeted at decision makers as well as enabling factors. Now, I'm not going to go into these today. I'm going to save that detail for the launch of the full report, but just to highlight again that report launch will take place at the UN Habitat Assembly in Nairobi at the 6th of June. I'll be there and look forward to discussing the research further, including those recommendations with you then. Thank you.
So we extend our thanks to Mr. Drabble via UN Habitat's colleagues. For those of you that are interested, we have here info sheets at the front. So on this card, you can find the QR code that will send you to the page where the full report will be uploaded. And here you have some information on the action points that are contained in the report. So I invite you all to have a look. And thank you, Mr. Katri, for your presentation. So we now move on. We can maybe have a round of applause. That's good. I click, but nothing is happening. All right, thank you. So our next presenter is Dr. Michael Eichholz. I'm sorry if I'm butchering your name. He is a policy advisor at the German Federal Institutes for Geosciences and Natural Resources in Hanover, Germany, and a member of the IWA Specialist Group on Groundwater Management. His areas of expertise include management and governance of groundwater and water supply, with reference to approaches on universal water access, groundwater resource protection, and climate resilience. He holds a PhD in geography based on research on water supply systems in Bolivian cities. He will now present a guidebook for water utilities and municipal authorities. The guidebook is titled Groundwater Assessment and Management for Sustainable Water Supply and Coordinated Subsurface Drainage. Michael, the floor is yours.
Yes, thank you very much, Juliana, for this kind introduction. And yeah, I have the pleasure to present to you a guidebook who has been elaborated by the Groundwater Management Specialist Group of IWA, which is headed by Professor Stephen Foster and Radu Gogo, who I'm representing today. The topic is groundwater assessment and management, especially for utilities and municipal authorities. And to give you a bit of the context of the problem, what have mainly utilities to do with groundwaters? So we see that groundwater is a major source of water for water utilities all around the world. It is has a large importance because of its characteristics as an underground resource that is relatively well protected against pollution in many parts of the world, and has also a buffer function against variations in precipitations, for example, and is therefore a very good resource for climate resilient water supply. And also groundwater in cities has a very important structural stability dimension, especially when we think of groundwater pumping out of the subsoil and subsequent land subsidence problems. So we see this importance of groundwater for utilities and for cities in general, but we see also some problems, and I want to highlight some of them. There's a lack of intersectoral coordination in the management of groundwater. We have utilities who are strongly dependent and using groundwaters. We have land use planning authorities that are not very well connected to the resource protection agencies, and we have a lot of agencies and institutions who has a say on groundwater, have interest in groundwater, and also influence what the groundwater quality and also problems that arise from groundwater variations. So there's also a scarcity of knowledge around groundwater as a hidden resource in many parts, and many cities do not know a lot about groundwater. There's need for constant monitoring as well as for in-depth characterizations of aquifers. So knowledge is a problem, but also awareness that leads to this lack of coordination and this kind of coherent and integrated approaches. All these problems result in some cities in very poor groundwater management that have strong consequences, especially for water utilities as well. So we have pollution problems, which leads to higher cost of water treatment for utilities. We have problems of over-exploitations of aquifers, where there's a mushrooming of private boreholes in many cities, and the poor coordination and control of groundwater access leads to leads to problems also for utilities. When you have lower revenues, when you have a lot of private boreholes, the better off sometimes are able to drill a borehole and do not connect to the utility networks, and there are a lot of commercial problems also arising from that. And then I mentioned already there are, for example, land subsidence problems. In the morning I heard a lady from Indonesia giving the example of I think Semarang city, where there's a lot of problems with land subsidence, which really is a problem also again for the utilities when the water mains are broken and infrastructure is affected by the movement of the land surface, and increased treatment cost as well. So this is the context in which this guidebook is being created. I will give you, the guidebook has 3 parts. The first part is on groundwater for urban water supply. It gives hints how to do diagnostic procedures to see the status. Where is my utility, our city is located within this field of groundwater management in cities. So another thing is then formulating strategic actions, recommendations for groundwater monitoring and management initiatives. So the second part is on groundwater hazards for urban infrastructure. This also starts with a characterization of problems, so understanding the characteristics of the most frequent urban groundwater issues, as I said, for example, land subsidence, groundwater pollutions, and the second part, B2, is then again looks at what could be the steps for integrated action. So as I said, action that involves all stakeholders who have a say in urban groundwater management, and usually are not on the table. So and also it gives it advocates for really taking groundwater management as part of an overall urban management of the subsurface space. Especially we have some examples from Bucharest in Romania, where we have strong interconnections, for example, with the tube lines and the sewers and the groundwater table. So we have infiltrations into the tube lines, dewatering of groundwater in some areas, infiltrations from groundwater to the sewage mains, and then which leads to higher amounts of water to be treated and higher cost. And there are a lot of interactions of the groundwater table with the infrastructure networks. And then as a third part, we have a lot of examples from all over the world. So all continents are represented, and this gives the opportunity to learn from these examples, to see characteristics, and also to be inspired of the solutions that has been found in other these places all around the world. And the publication is open source, so anybody can access this. You can scan this QR code and get into the page where you can download it. And as a groundwater specialist group of IWR, we are very open to exchange and also to partner in this issue with all interested utilities and other partners. So thanks a lot for your attention.
Thank you very much, Michael. If there's any question, just feel free to ask. We are not a large group, so okay. Later. Thank you so much. So our next presenter is Anke Verheij. She is a water expert with professional experience in the fields of integrated water resources management, urban drinking water supply, and governance in Asia and Africa. She's currently working at VEI, Vitesse Vitesse International, as program coordinator of the Waterworks program. Anke has been involved in WOPs for 6 years, which she has spent 2 in Vietnam. She will now present the report of phase 1 of the Waterworks program. Please, Anke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Juliana. It's a pleasure to be here and to share with you some more information on the Waterworks program and on the results that we've achieved in the first phase of the program. So for those of you who are not yet familiar with the Waterworks program, it's a large-scale program. It's a joint initiative of all 10 Dutch water utilities, and within this program we partner with over 40 utilities in various countries in Africa, Asia, and Latin America. It has 2 main goals. The first main goal is performance improvement of water utilities, and the second main goal is sustainable, inclusive, and climate resilient water and sanitation services, either basic services or moving towards safely managed, to the current customers of all the utilities, but also to an additional 10 million people. And how do we work? Well, we work through water operator partnerships, what this conference is all about. But what is additional to how we work in WOPs is that what we also do is that we work on mobilizing and acquiring finance for infrastructure. So we work a lot with international development banks. We also work on the enabling environment to sustain the results. We work with local governments and with other institutions. Something else that's key for us is knowledge management across WOPs. I think you've seen all the communities of practice that are there. In all those communities of practice, we are very much active, and we support our utilities to collaborate with each other and to share best practices. And of course, we work with the staff of our partner utilities on capacity development. So the Waterworks program, it's a long-term program. It consists of 3 different phases, and here I'm presenting the results of phase 1, which is really focusing on getting the basics right. And now we are in phase 2, which started in the beginning of 2021. And now we're really focusing on acceleration and on stepping up maturity. And we are preparing for a 3rd phase that will continue until the end of 2030, so for the Sustainable Development Goal period. So this is a big overview of results of phase 1. On this map you can see all the countries and utilities that we collaborated with in the first phase. Almost all of them are still partners now in the 2nd phase, but there are also some new partners. We in total connected almost 2 million NEEL people to the water and/or sanitation network, of which some were directly funded through the Waterworks program and other indirectly through funding also from other investors. And in the first phase, we worked with 39 partner utilities. Some more information is that in the first phase we really focused, like I said, on getting the basics right. So starting with a lot of trainings on various topics depending on the needs of the partner companies. We focused with this connection of more people, this 1.8 million people, really on low-income areas. So more than half of the people that were reached are living in low-income areas. Which is something that our colleague Festina Bauchi, who is also here and has been involved in many sessions this week, can tell you a lot more. And as I said, we've been working on these investment projects. So we've been developing almost 85 ideas, investment ideas. Some are more developed than others, some are already funded by financiers, and some are working on it. But that's really important for us also to support the utilities in mobilizing this investment. And we already see some improvements in utility performance on non-revenue water reduction, on financial performance, and also on the hours of supply. And while we realize that this performance improvement in KPIs, it takes quite some time. So in the first 4 years, you don't see a lot of improvements. And that's why also in the second phase of the program, we introduced a new monitoring system so that we can also in between see already steps of improvement of certain working processes that we are working on. And yeah, these 9 communities of practice were established, and now there are even more. And now in the second phase of the program, we also started collaborating with GWOPA. And it's not really in the report, but I wanted to give you a short, brief outlook already on what we are doing now in phase 2. So we continue supporting our partner utilities. But now we are also focusing more on climate resilience. So we have an extra part of the program really focusing on climate adaptation measures that are needed. As I said, we've introduced a new performance assessment framework. You can see it a bit here. There are different main processes that we are using for assessing our partner utilities and also to see improvements. And within these main processes, there are almost 120 sub-processes that we are monitoring, and also based on that, we've developed a project plan or a work plan with the utilities to try to see where do we want to make improvements. And it's based also on the utility turnaround framework of the World Bank. We have a target in the second phase, which is quite ambitious, to reach 3.5 million people, partly direct, but partly also through the funding of external financiers. We continue working on the enabling environment of our partner utilities because we realize this is very crucial to sustain the results. Another aspect is Southern leadership. So as with some of our partners, we've already been collaborating 5 years, with some already 10 years, that there's also a gradual move towards becoming a mentor utility. So utilities, for example, in the Philippines are now supporting new partners in the Philippines as mentor, while still receiving support from us when needed. So we see this gradual scaling up of the program with more and more WOPs and more partner utilities. And we are intensifying on knowledge management together with GWOPA. So that's what I wanted to share with you. You can see the completion report through this link. It includes a lot of stories from people involved in our WOPs. And also, if you would like to learn more about the second phase of the program that we are currently in, you can also check out our website, which includes information on the second phase. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Anke, for your presentation. Our next speaker is Claire Grandadam. She's the communication coordinator at the Water Integrity Network, also known as WIN. Claire has been working in water governance and anti-corruption in water and sanitation for nearly 10 years. In addition to awareness raising and communication, one key area of her work at WIN is looking at internal governance and change management processes, especially in utilities. So now I invite Claire here to the stage to present when vulnerabilities are exploited, the role of sextortion in the wash sector in Bangladesh.
Thanks very much, Juliana. So, we have done research in Bangladesh. It's one of the biggest studies of its kind on the topic of sextortion, where we interviewed about 1,200 women through our partners. The partners are called Change Initiative and DORP, and discussed what was happening when they were accessing water or accessing sanitation facilities. Now I'm going to explain what I'm talking about. Sextortion is an act of corruption, an act of extortion. Instead of money being exchanged, it's a sexual act. It could be a photo, it could be something more serious. And this is happening far more than most people realize, and certainly far more than most people are willing to talk about. So I know it's uncomfortable, but I think it's key that we realize what's actually going on when people are accessing their most essential basic services. So this research in Bangladesh is unique in its kind because it's so far-reaching and because it focuses specifically on the topic of sextortion rather than just sexually based violence to women in accessing water. What we found out is that when women are accessing services, 15% report having had some form of sexual harassment against them, and a good third of these kinds of acts are actually sextortion. So it's people being asked to pay with their bodies for an essential basic service. What's interesting in this research and important to keep in mind as a utility or as a person working with utilities is what we can do about it and what we need to be aware of in terms of risks. What the research shows very clearly is that water insecurity is a key factor of risk. So people who are more water insecure are likely to have to engage in this kind of act when normal sexual harassment is not as apparent for the same kind of population. So water insecurity is a key risk factor. So is illiteracy, and so is generally poverty. So what we need to do to make sure this doesn't happen anymore is to take into account these risks and look as utilities at what we can do to reach out to the people who may have been affected. Why are we focusing on this topic in particular, and why do we have to bring out the issue of corruption specifically? The fact that there is a transaction, whether it's willed or not willed, is a major problem. It means that nobody is reporting the issue because they're afraid of stigma, because they're afraid of the consequences of what will happen when this comes to light, and they have to live when they're affected with the consequences of what's happened for life. And many women who have been victims of sextortion may have difficulties fitting in, are rejected by their families, have to go to when they do decide to actually do something about it and report it, have to face people who are inconsiderate, who don't believe them, who blame them for doing what they have done, and this is not okay. So we're calling everybody just to be aware of the issue and to be aware of the fact that this is probably a much bigger issue than people realize, and that there's something that we actually have to be aware of as utilities to make sure that it doesn't happen, and to put in place safe reporting mechanisms for women to come forward when they need to. So I'm going to not focus entirely on this publication because it's right there, you can read it. The research is solid and it's been published in an academic journal, which I invite you to take a look at outside. But I'm also going to touch on another publication and a new tool that we've just published. And this tool is integrity management tool for utilities to manage their processes and management practices to improve on certain risks. Sextortion is one of the risks that this toolbox looks at, and the way to move forward as a utility is simply to first raise awareness about this not being acceptable, raise awareness about whether there might be reporting mechanisms for people to come forward, and to protect the people who might become victims. And the tool is much broader than this issue and has lots of resources for utilities to think about how they are managing their operations, their accounting, their human resources, to favor integrity, favor equity, and make sure that their services are serving everybody. It's a full process. We've just updated, so if you have questions about what you can do to promote integrity as a utility, there's also some resources that I have left outside that you can check out. One more call. The problem with this topic is that it is very sorely under-researched, and so if there is any interest in furthering research on gender-based violence in access to water and sanitation, we're keen to collaborate, and we invite everybody to come forward and talk to us. Thank you. So
thank you so much, Claire, and I reiterate the invitation to have a look also at the desk that is located just outside the room with some additional information. So the next and last presentation is a presentation that is done by the World Health Organization and the IWA, but I will do it on their behalf. And it's about the Water Safety Planning Revised Manual. So here, who in this room is familiar with water safety planning or is actually using water safety planning in practice? Okay, that's good. So for you, probably it's going to be more interesting than for others. Nonetheless, I think it's still relevant to know that the manual has been updated and there's new information out there. So what were the drivers for implementation? Sorry, for revision. So the manual was initially launched in 2009, and since then there's been a lot of evidence of implementation of water safety planning throughout the world. I can see now another water safety planning implementer coming in the room. Good. So there's evidence from 93 countries that have been implementing it, and there's a lot of lessons learned from it. So the idea was actually to implement the lessons learned in the revision. So what are the drivers for the revision? So number one is to reflect, as I said, on global experience. Number two is to address misunderstanding. So the first time that you develop a manual and then it's implemented, for sure there will be something that is not completely on point. So the idea of WHO and IWA was actually to correct that. Also to emphasize the water safety planning is much more than just drinking water quality, which is also one of the misconceptions out there. And to include growing challenges. So there's also a lot of work being done on equity and climate change, and these have been integrated in the new revision. And also to strengthen WSP implementation globally. So what are the key changes in the manual? Number one is to ensure that water safety encompasses quality, acceptability, and quantity in the context of public health protection. So let's see how they did this. So in the first edition of the manual, there was a classification of hazard types that was based on what you can see in the slide. So microbial, chemical, radiological, and physical. Then after learning from experience, they realized that it's better to make explicit the concept of physical. So they split it basically on acceptability aspects and quantity issues. The rest is still the same. The second key change is to strengthen guidance on WSP implementation. So WSP, as you know, and mostly as practitioners know, is a continuous cycle. So it's not something that is done once and then just left over there. And what the WHO and IWA tried to do is to make that evident in the manual. So they tried to break the implementation into 4 steps. So one is the development, which is the initial development of the document and of the risk assessment. The second is the WSP in operation, so what happens when the WSP is an alive document and is used in daily practices. Then we have verification and WSP review. So one example comes from Module 5, which is improvement planning. So how do we look at improvement planning in the different phases? So if you look on the top right, you have improvement plans that are prepared in the initial phase, so in the development. Then improvement plans are actually put into practice during operation. And then there's not really a specific activity during the verification. And then for the review, there is the update of the improvement plans. So it's quite straightforward and logic, but this was made more explicit in the revision of the manual. Then the third key change is clarifying the risk assessment methodology. This, again, may be a little bit too specific for those that are not familiar with water safety planning, but please bear with me. So the 2 modules, Module 3 and Module 4, were basically split in 2. So now, Module 3 is looking at identification of hazards and hazardous events, and that's it. And Module 4 is looking at the risk assessment. So this was neatly split into 2, and before was a little bit muddled between the modules. In addition, in Module 4, there is the difference explained between the 1-stage risk assessment and the 2 stages risk assessment. And also there's a revised risk matrix with the definition of likelihood and consequence. Then the number 4 is the holistic integration of climate and equity considerations. So as I explained very briefly at the beginning, there was a lot of work going on in terms of equity, also in water safety planning, and the manual that came out from that, and also another manual that came out from the climate resilience work. So what they did is basically to integrate all the information into one manual only. So people can only go to this new manual and they don't have to fetch for information elsewhere. So if you are a practitioner, what should you do now? So you shouldn't get desperate now and immediately look at all the different resources, but you should keep this into account. So next time that you will have a WSP revision, the call from WHO and IWA is to look at the new manual and try to implement the information in your current practices. Some additional features, which in my opinion are very beneficial, is additional guidance from different areas around the world and also from different contexts. So this is very important. And there's a lot of case studies, as you can see, from all over the world that were added now. There is also a toolbox, very important, with many different templates which were not available before. And there's clear explanation on key changes, how to manage WSPs for multiple systems, and on how to integrate WSPs if you already have other existing management practices in place. So with this, I would like to thank you for your attention and also guide you to the resource online. If you want, IWA and WHO were so kind to send us a bunch of books, but they didn't manage to get here on time, so they're still stuck at customs, so apologies for that. But you can still download the resource from here. So with this, I thank you very much for your participation today. I would like to thank all the speakers that presented their publications, and I invite you to have a look at the resources online. Thank you so much.